Hey YouTubers, so I'm here today with my 75 horsepower Mariner outboard, and I'm sitting in my runabout conversion. You can see on my other videos how I converted this 16-foot runabout into a cuddy cabin boat. And today I'm going to be showing you how to remove the oil injection pump off of one of these two-stroke engines. These things are always failing, and it's usually due to the gear that runs the pump inside the engine. It's quite expensive to replace that gear, and simply fix is just to take the oil injection pump off and just mix your own gas. Then you're not worried about the engine overheating, and these engines will run a long time if you maintain them properly and keep the right oil mix. So I'm just going to crack the cover off here, and I'll just go through the steps how to remove the oil injection. It's quite simple. You can remove the oil tank as well, and then just bypass the pump and just mix your own fuel. All right, so here's the pump right here. This little unit is what, sorry, this one down here. This is the fuel pump. This is the little unit here that pumps the oil or draws the oil from the oil container and then mixes it in this T-valve here into the oil so that you get the right mix for the engine on these two-stroke engines. And so basically what I'm going to do is, if you can see down in there, there's a shaft that goes into the engine. So I'm going to remove this unit here. I'm going to take that shaft out that drives this pump, and then just put this back on, and then I'm just going to cap off that and then just get rid of this T that's in here so that we can just run the fuel straight through up to the carburetors, and which will be mixed in the gas tanks at this point. So before you remove the oil pump and all the lines, you're going to want to remove this oil container. This is where the oil is stored that gets pumped into the fuel. And you can see I got here, I drew a little line on here because I wanted to check to see how much the oil was going down. And this, was a test to see when I was running the engine. I was running it with the 50-to-1 mix in the gas, and because I didn't think that the oil pump was working. And so I drew a little line on the tank here, and you can see it's actually gone down about 1/4 inch, but I've gone through like 3 tanks of gas since I actually drew that line on there, and it should have easily used this whole container at that point. So I could tell that the pump is slow, sort of working. It's gone down a little bit, but it's not going down anywhere near as much as it should. I'm going to be showing you hopefully the internal of the engine as well, where the gear that's wrecked is. I got a little camera I'll point in there for you. But the first thing you do is just remove this tank, drain the oil out of it, so that you don't make a big mess on the other side when you pull the lines off for the oil. All right, so I just taken off the 2 bolts up top here, and there's 2 bolts down at the bottom, and then you can just lever this oil tank out, and then it's just the one line down the bottom here that you just have to disconnect and let the oil drain out of the container. You can actually, if it's low like this, you can tip it up on its side like this, and then when you take the oil line off, it's not even going to leak out if it's just got only like 1/2 liter like I do in there. And you can see how much more access this gives you to the side of the engine as well, to carburetors and things like that. So you can leave the oil container on if you just capped it off on the other side. But I always just take it off. It's so much easier just to take it off. And then you have so much more clearance on the engine as well if you do any maintenance. Okay, so there's one other thing I forgot to mention when you're moving this oil container, is it's got this plug here at the bottom that you'll have to disconnect. And this is basically just a low oil indicator. So it sets off an alarm in the handle or something if it's got low oil. But it's just a dead short, so once you disconnect it, you don't need to do anything else on the engine. Just maybe tape up if you need to the connections here, just so that they don't short out on the side of the engine or something. Probably wouldn't happen anyways, but it's always good to just keep things tidy against the engine there. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to use a pair of pliers to just take off these crimped fuel lines. And any hoses, like this little hose here that goes up where the actual oil comes up and gets it pumped into the fuel mixture. And then I can go ahead and just remove the actual oil injector from the engine. All right, so what I'm going to do basically here is this shaft is what turns this little piece sticking out here, and it's very simple. You just basically pull this out. You see it's got the little groove on the end there that fits onto here and turns the pump. And I'm basically just going to get rid of this. So I'm going to take that out. I'm going to put it back together with these two pieces in there. That way you don't have to try and seal up that hole in the back of the engine, because you already got the seals on here. The oil and stuff's still going to kind of splash up here. Or whatever that's it was already in the bottom of the sump there, the oil that's coming through. So it's not going to make any difference as long as the seals are good on the pump. Then you shouldn't have any problems there at all. Alright, so here you can see the small plastic gear that I was talking about, and you can see that it's all chewed up. Why they make this gear out of plastic, I have no idea. Maybe to make the engine quieter, but this little gear that's in here is usually the culprit that stops the oil pumps from working. And to get this gear out, you literally have to take the entire engine to pieces to replace this, as it's down underneath the pistons in the head. So you have to take the whole engine apart to get this out. So it's much easier just to do what I'm doing here and just mix your gas if it's one of these older engines. But if you ever end up rebuilding the engine, you can always replace this little gear here, and then you could put the pump back together and not have to mix gas anymore. But for my purpose and most people, it's just easier just to remove the gear from the pump and put it back together, and that little gear in there should be fine, just all chewed up like it is. And finally, all I have to do then is this line here was the line that used to go from the pump and fed up to into the carburetors, or basically it just teed off here into the fuel line, and the fuel drew past this up into the carburetors. So I'm just going to remove this tee. It's going to put it straight through in this pipe, and that's all there is to it. And once I got that done, I'll show you guys how it looks. Alright, so there we go. You can see here, right here, I just put the straight through in. And the only thing I have left to do is, actually didn't have any, but there's these little plastic caps that you can push over the old connection on the pump there. And there's just two of those, one down here and the one on the top. And just basically need to cap those off, just so dirt doesn't get in there or whatever. Because you might want to end up, rehooking this up down the road, and you don't want this pump to, at that point, not be functioning. So just cap those off, and that's all there is to it. So the pump's still sitting on there. Just remove the shaft, and just removed the T. So now the fuel just comes straight through, and we'll be mixing the gas in the engine, in the fuel tank. And on this side, you can see that I just removed the tank there. There's nothing else to do other than just tidy the wires back up once I had removed the tank. All right, thanks for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed the video, and we'll see you out on the water.